As the car drove down the black road, filled with a single yellow line going down the middle, the flames raging far behind us. Less than a minute after we left, we could already see the university catching fire. The flames spreading across the school, probably towards the rest of the city as well. Indianapolis has fallen. The entire university, once full of teachers and students, now burnt to the ground. I sat in the driver's seat as usual, taking us to our next destination. My attention usually wavered during conversation, so I refrained from talking to others until we were stopped. The road was barren at the moment. "You okay?" I took my eyes off the road to ask. Hunter was sitting beside me, tearing off a ripped piece of his sleeve.
Yeah, I'm good, man. Just cut my arm on some glass.
He answered, unconvincingly. I frowned, grabbing his hand to see blood trickling down his wrist from the covered wound. I looked at him and asked, "Did they get you?" He shook his head.
Nah, I'm fine. It's not from one of them. If any of them got me, I would tell you.
I nodded to him before looking to Quinn, who was putting something together as he sat in the booth nearby. He was tearing apart a box of matches, creating some small craft of sorts. After a while, he finally joined the conversation.
"So, what is the deal with the boy?"
The three of us looked at Axel and Julia, who were watching Spencer continue to play on his game buddy. "Axel? He got trapped in a car wreck," I explained to him, leaving out the part with Luis.
He's one of the only people who made it off that bridge alive. The entire East Bridge at a Green Book went down, and Luis went with it.
Hunter continued.
"Well, if he proves to be a useful asset on our journey, we may keep him.
Quinn told us as he began wrapping some more dark powder in construction paper.
If not, I suggest we drop him off at the closest police station."
"We can't," I told him. "The police are after us at the moment."
"After us? Let me guess. Hunter let it slip about Luis's stash."
I'm not that dumb. For your information, none of us did anything. The police are blaming us for the incident because we were some of the only survivors who actually made it across the bridge without crashing. That, and because we looked suspicious as hell.
This is quite the predicament we are in. Madeline briefly informed me of our plan back at the university. Where are Anikan and Sarah again?
"Chicago," I told him. Space had something personal to take care of, and he went up with her to keep the two of them safe. We should contact them and find a better place for our rendezvous.
Where? This place is a wasteland.
Maddie asked, staring out the window. We had indeed driven into the wasteland of sorts. To our left was a thick forest, and on our right, a grassy field that stretched for miles. Behind us, a burning city. And in front of us, an endless road.
In the 8 or so hours that you claim I was unconscious, did any of you do anything productive?
He questioned. "Does punching Spencer count?" I asked, raising my hand. He sighed, and I turned to look at the constant annoyance that was Spencer. "Hey, twat waffle. Can you mess with the phone's location for a few minutes so I can make a call?" The boy glared at me, pulling down his hood and opening his computer. He began typing on it, and a few minutes later, turned to me and nodded.
Your phone signal is now encrypted. You only got 5 minutes, so be quick.
I nodded back to him, pulled out my phone, turning on the service and calling Anikan. I waited a few seconds, hoping he would answer. He didn't have his phone encrypted, so would he even get the call? A few seconds later, he picked up.
"Hello to you too."
Anikan greeted.
"How'd Indiana go?"
"Well, it's on fire now," I told him.
"You're such a pyromaniac. Seriously, you have a fetish for that shit."
I glared at the road in front of me. "It wasn't my idea. It was Quinn's. And for your information, it was either that or we all died."
"I'm joking. Calm down, Andrew."
Anikan told me.
"I can feel your pissiness through the phone. How's Quinn?"
"He's alive. A bit banged up, kinda sore, but alive. There's a gas station up ahead we're gonna stop at, okay? Aniline Road. Literally the only landmark on this street," I told him.
"Got it. You better not have burned it down by the time I get back."
I chuckled lightly before ending the call, turning off the Wi-Fi and tossing the phone onto the dashboard. I then continued driving, eventually finding a place to stop. On the side of the road was a small gas station in a gravel clearing. 2 cars were parked beside the pumps, but nobody seemed to be outside with them. I parked the RV in front of one of the open pumps as we were beginning to run out of gas. Quinn eyed the meter inside.
Already? Oh, Luis, you could not have splurged for once in your life.
Hunter shot Quinn a glare before hopping out of the RV, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a pack of cigarettes. Before he could light one, Maddie slipped it out of his hands with the kids trailing behind her.
You need to stop that. We're doing all of this so we don't die, and meanwhile you're practically murdering your lungs.
My lungs are fine.
Hunter said, taking out another. Once again, she slapped it out of his hands. Walking towards the gas station with Axel and Julia behind her, Hunter instead reached into his vest and pulled a blunt out of a plastic bag, preparing to light it. But as soon as he raised it towards the lighter, Maddie shouted,
Put it down, Hunter!
He sighed, stuffing the blunt back into his pocket before grabbing the gas pump and pulling out his credit card. Meanwhile, Quinn, Isabella, and I approached the gas station, eyeing it suspiciously.
It seems to be abandoned,
Quinn commented, eyeing the lack of employee behind the desk.
Maybe they're in the back.
Julia suggested. Or maybe they're dead. If there were any mutants inside, it wouldn't be best for all of us to be in such a closed-off space, I thought. I then whispered to them all, If anyone sees a mutant, then alert the rest quietly. Maddie, you get the kids out of here. Maddie nodded, but before we walked inside, we turned to Quinn, who was reading his book, while standing nearby. I snatched it from him, dragging him alongside with the rest of us. Pay attention, Quinn. Maybe you'll find something you like in here.
You might see something you like if you take a look,
Quinn said as he pushed past me and approached the door. I flipped the page, and my eyes focused on the gleaming wonder sitting in the middle. The KSG tactical shotgun was plastered onto the page, a full set of details listed below it. It was my dream gun. The beautiful, sleek black color, a full 14 shots, and what an amazing spread. I stood there, staring at the photo in awe, till I was finally interrupted. I stumbled back, dropping the book as everyone turned their heads toward me. I looked at Quinn like he was insane, which he probably was, while he simply shot me a satisfied grin.
Daydream about your gun fetish later. Come, let us raid this cove of treasures for supplies.
Quinn walked ahead towards the front entrance, while I upholstered my Desert Eagle, turning off the safety. I whispered to them as we walked through the front doors. You see anything suspicious? Just scream. I'll hold them off while you get back to the RV.
Should we really be looting?
Maddie asked nervously. Quinn pointed behind the counter.
I doubt he'll need any of it.
We all looked to the front counter to see a man slumped over. A gun was in his hand, covered in blood from the pool that had spread all over the counter from his head. He had a look of fear on his face, meaning his attacker didn't take him by surprise. Maddie quickly covered the 2 kids' eyes with her hands, though they tried to peek through her fingers.
Killed by a handgun at point-blank range. Execution style.
We left the body, beginning to search the gas station for anything we could take with us. Our supplies were dwindling due to Luis's disdain for planning ahead. Maddie went to the 2 aisles for snacks and food, stuffing bags of chips, cups of ramen, and some candy with her. While she looked for necessities, Spencer took the opposite route. He went to the aisle closest to the window, finding a rack of gift cards and cheap DVD movies. Spencer immediately snatched up several cards for credit on the Game Buddy online shop, which were virtually worthless at this point. When the bombing came, society would cave. So would the internet, and depending on how the end of the world played out, so would the era of online video games. I continued to the next aisle, but it was barren of life. A large splatter of blood covered the floor, but no body was there. It could be from a mutant, or it could be one of the owners of the cars outside. We hadn't found any more bodies yet. The aisle in front of mine went to Quinn. It was filled with some survivalist gear and other tools. He grabbed 2 small screwdriver kits, a fully equipped toolbox on the floor, 4 first aid kits, and several bags of paracord. After looting any survivalist equipment we may need, he approached one of the shelves in the back near the drink dispensers. There were 2 machines, a popcorn machine and a taquito machine. Quinn reached down to his belt, revealing a sleek black military knife. In 2 swift strokes, he shattered the glass of the taquito machine, pulling the taquito out and taking a bite. "You're really eating that shit?"
I, unfortunately, am a human, just like the rest of you. I enjoy the taste of taquitos, so sue me if you wish,
he said as he continued to munch down his food. I walked to the next aisle, expecting to find some more snacks and candy. However, I instead found a body, spread eagle in the center of the aisle. Blood had pooled up beneath him, leaking into the cracked tile floor below him. "Victim numero dos," I said to the others, gesturing for them to approach us. Quinn set down his taquito on the counter, slowly approaching it. In the man's chest was a large silver knife, a piece of paper stabbed through it. He ripped the knife out of the body and tossed it aside, looking at the small piece of paper. "What's it say?" It looked to be in Japanese, but it was just a few words or less. A few symbols, but not an entire sentence or anything.
Japanese. The language of anime. One reason why I never cared for it.
Quinn said rudely. Maddie growled at him and snatched the note away, taking a quick look at the Japanese writing.
It says Sakara?
"What's that mean?" I asked curiously. "Isn't that a tree?"
That's Sakura. This is Sakara. Maybe it's a calling card?
Axel walked past the 3 of us, approaching the dead man. Lying on the ground beside him was a brown Stetson he had been wearing. Axel put on the Stetson, the hat matching the brown jacket he was wearing.
Looking stylish, little man.
Spencer commented, kneeling down and patting Axel on the head. His cheeks turned a faint red color as he stared up at Spencer, a bit annoyed and confused.
"Don't pat me. But thanks, Spencer,"
he said with a smile. Quinn turned around, sighing as he stepped away from the body.
From the evidence I've gathered here, I have come to assume that the 2 men killed in this gas station were certainly not killed by mutants or a common criminal. This calling card indicates it was someone specific, a serial killer or a gang.
A gang? Why would... Before I could finish my sentence, I spotted something past Quinn. A man outside, stepping out of the bushes with something in his hands. An automatic weapon. And he wasn't alone. "Get down!" We all dropped to the floor, dodging a storm of bullets as they shattered the glass windows. Maddie grabbed the 2 kids as we took cover behind the back aisle, watching the bullets break open a bag of chips and shatter a corner of the metal shelves. "Stay down! Move to the back door, slowly!" I shouted over the gunfire. I held up my Desert Eagle, aiming it at the door as a man rushed inside. Before he could spot us, I fired, taking him down with 3 shots. His body spazzed for a brief moment before falling straight to the ground. His gun slid across the floor, and Quinn picked it up, aiming it out the window. Quinn let the gun loose out the window, trying to draw their fire while the rest of us snuck out from behind the aisles. I kicked through the exit door on the back. The door swung open to reveal 2 men sneaking up to kill us. I fired, killing one before the other fired back. The bullets tore into the metal door, and I eliminated him with a 3rd shot. One by one, we rushed out of the gas station, creeping along the back. I knelt down and picked up the fallen man's pistol, handing it to Maddie. "Take the kids and go around left. We'll go along the right and clear the path to the RV." Maddie looked down at the gun, but before she could ask anything else, another 2 gunshots rang out. She cringed, running around the other side of the RV with Axel and Julia behind her. Meanwhile, I rushed to the other side, leading Spencer and Quinn behind me. I peeked out, firing rapidly at a group of men approaching the RV. 2 went down before my gun clicked, and before I could retreat, a bullet whizzed past me. It missed me, but Spencer wasn't so lucky. He let out a scream of pain, clutching his arm as blood trickled from the graze that had slashed through it. "Take care of him!" I shouted, as I dug another clip out of my hoodie. Quinn dug into his backpack, and instead of taking one of the first aid kits, he pulled out a roll of silver duct tape. "What's that gonna do?"
For now, save your life. We can patch you up properly once we're safe,
Quinn said as he cut the line of tape off of the roll. He pushed it down over the bloody wound, and Spencer winced, slightly tearing up. I expected him to start crying, but he took the pain pretty well. I began scanning the tree line for shooters and turned to the others. "Alright, on 3, we'll make a break for the RV. If someone goes down, scatter and take cover behind the cars."
I'll give us some cover,
Quinn exclaimed, before reaching into his pocket. He pulled out 3 small multicolored rolls of paper glued together, and lit the match-like tip on the end with Hunter's lighter before tossing it forward. A bright burning flame burst from the tip as the 3 slips fled towards the enemies, who temporarily ceased their fire in response.
What are those?
Spencer asked.
Makeshift flares. If you cannot be stronger, be smarter.
Quinn and Spencer nodded before I ran out from behind the back of the gas station, firing aimlessly at the tree line. Quinn stayed nearby while Spencer bolted past us, diving to the ground as a bullet whizzed over his head. He rushed to the RV, but stopped as a man peeked out from the back and fired at him. He ducked, diving to the side and rolling behind one of the cars. Quinn and I joined him, sliding across the gravel. Gunfire rained upon us and I turned my head, spotting Maddie, Axel, and Julia pinned down on the other side of the gas station. We didn't know how many people were surrounding us, but it was definitely a lot.
I may have a plan.
Spencer told us. "It better be a damn good one!" I shouted, as I shot from a man rushing out of the trees.
Okay, so in Grand Theft Auto, I used to troll other players by killing them, hiding in a gas station, and shooting the pumps to blow them up when they came to get me.
Quinn stared at him, dumbfounded.
Are you suggesting we use tactics you learned in a video game?
Actually, that could work. Only problem is we're right in between the pumps.
We just need a distraction. If someone can get the RV and start it up, then maybe we can get out of here.
I'll do it then. When you see those headlights flash on, retreat inside the gas station. They'll be forced to push forward, and when you can, set it off. Spencer and Quinn nodded to me before I got up, taking off across the clearing. With every heartbeat, a bullet fired, the crack of a gun repeating itself every split second. I dodged each and every one of the enemy's projectiles, the small brass bullets zipping in between my legs and along my body. I rushed up to the RV, grabbing the side of the door and to pull myself up, when the gunfire suddenly stopped. A hand grabbed my hood and I felt myself being thrown to the ground. My face scraped against the gravel, and before I could get back, a gun was held to my head.
Move and I shoot.
I stayed frozen, sitting there as my cheek burned intensely from the wound. I could feel blood on the side of my face, but I couldn't wipe it off. All I could do was surrender.
Maroney, take their weapons.
The man spoke deeply. Another man with a white sleeveless hoodie and a gray scarf around the side of his face walked over and grabbed my silver Desert Eagle. The others stopped firing as another large group of similarly dressed men walked out of the forest behind them. Hunter was with them, his hands raised and a gun to his back.
Andrew, I suggest we stay silent and listen to their demands,
Quinn said, noticing my anger. "Who the hell are you?" The man smirked deviously as he stood next to the RV.
We are the Sakara, and this is our territory.
You killed those men inside the gas station?
Maddie asked. He nodded.
That is correct, miss. They died because they did not adhere to our demands, and now you will die for killing 4 of our own. Oh, not to mention the addition of the people you gunned down here.
Killing 4 of your own?
Spencer asked. Then I remembered. At the campsite. There were 4 gunmen, all of them wearing outfits that seemed to signify they were in a gang of sorts. At first, I assumed they were junkies, but now I realized they weren't just any criminals. Quinn began to speak.
Well, my good sir, I'm sure we can...
Without warning, a motorcycle sped into the clearing, and the 2 people on it dived off. The vehicle slammed into 4 people, knocking them aside like rag dolls. The driver then pulled out his silver Colt Python, shooting the 2 men beside their leader. The cavalry had arrived. The leader of the Sakara pistol-whipped Hunter before rushing away, firing back at the motorcycle aimlessly. Anakin fired at 2 of them before kneeling down behind the RV, Space at his side. Space reached into her waistband, pulling out a black pistol. However, I knew she wouldn't use it. She was scared. Anakin fired back with his revolver, shooting at the enemy who were retreating into the forest. There were about 14 men left by the time they pinned us down. But Anakin's ambush had taken out a good 6. Now they knew they weren't going to win, and were retreating to wherever they came from. I quickly scrambled for my Desert Eagle, looting it from the fallen body before firing at the enemy, killing one of them. Quinn grabbed his knife and pistol before the 2 of us, plus Spencer, Maddie, and the kids rushed towards the gas station and out of the line of fire. Get down! 6 men poked their guns out of the bushes from behind the gas station and began firing. Luckily, Anakin was able to take cover, ducking down behind the RV. He grabbed Hunter, dragging the disoriented man into the RV as the gunman fired at the front, shattering the window. While Anakin took cover, the rest of us made our way into the RV, but as we charged across the gravel clearing towards the building, I spotted a man raise his weapons towards the gas pumps. I let out a scream, but it was pointless. Nothing could stop the bullet that proceeded to fire from his gun, spiraling straight through the air at the pumps. The 4 gas stations immediately erupted in flames, the explosion sending gravel flying through the air and fire streaking across the ground. The force sent me rolling across the floor, Space getting knocked against the RV by the blast. The rest of them managed to get inside the gas station, all except for one. I watched as Maddie was blown aside by the explosion, her body lying in the gravel when the smoke cleared.
Maddie!
Spencer exclaimed, fighting his way back to his feet. He staggered towards her injured body, falling back down beside her. The boy tried to turn her over, but he was too weak to drag her inside. Hunter rushed to their aid, firing once with their shotgun before tossing it aside. He grabbed Maddie by the shoulders, dragging her inside while Spencer attempted and failed to pick up her feet. I peeked outside, firing back at the enemy with my last clip. Through the fading smoke, I could see Anakin struggling to get up, Space lying on the ground nearby. 2 men ran to her disoriented body, grabbing her by the arms and dragging her away. Hunter aimed and fired his shotgun, killing one while the other dragged away Space. Anakin rubbed his eyes before taking off after them, holding up his revolver to shoot. His finger hit the trigger just as another man tackled him to the ground, pulling out a large knife. I rushed to him, watching as Anakin gripped the blade of the dagger to keep from being stabbed. I rushed over and kicked the man holding Anakin down, shooting him in the head right after. The disoriented Anakin groaned, covering his ears from the sound of the blast. I knelt down and helped him up before the 2 of us took off into the forest, running after Space's kidnappers. I took his hand and I ran towards the men retreating into the forest. I aimed and fired 3 times, 2 shots hitting trees and another grazing a man on the arm. The others stayed behind, except for Anakin, who continued to run ahead of me. He fired 3 more times, and 1 shot knocked down the running man.
Let her go!
Anakin shouted at the man who was holding Space in her arms as she tried to struggle. Before we could get close enough, a shotgun blast nearly blew my head off. I took cover behind a tree, watching as a man hiding in the bushes fired once again, breathing heavily. I looked towards Anakin to see him chase down the two dragging away Space. I expected him to go for the one holding her. However, he instead went for the boy in the white hoodie beside him, tackling him into the grass. He tumbled through the brush and reached out for his shotgun, but Anakin kicked it away and held his Colt to his head. The man punched him in the stomach and the weapon fell from his hands. He took the chance to crawl over to his weapon, but Anakin grabbed his machete and rose his hand to swing at him. The two both raised their weapons, but the other man was the faster one. His shotgun was held to Anakin's chest before he could swing. For a second, I thought I would have to watch him blow my friend's lungs out from afar. But instead, the man simply slammed the barrel of his weapon into Anakin and knocked him down before rushing away. By the time Anakin was up, the man was gone. He gunned down the shotgun wielder trying to kill me before we both took out, emerging into a clearing to see several cars speeding off. The man from before was beside one, shoving Space inside. The man tried to force Space inside, but she kicked him in the shin and tried to hold him off. I fired once, but a man tackled me to the ground. Anakin, who had been standing beside me, chose not to help me, but instead to charge at the car, firing rapidly with his reloaded Colt Python.
Let her...
He fired twice, the two bullets shattering the back windshield as the car sped off down the dirt path. I quickly gunned down the man who tackled me, shooting him 3 times in the stomach before shoving his body aside. I got up, watching as Anakin hopelessly ran at the car before tossing his machete, the blood-coated weapon smacking against the license plate before falling into the dirt. He fell to his knees, breathing heavily. I rushed to his side, kneeling down to ensure that he was alive. While he hadn't been shot during the firefight, his hand had been sliced open when he grabbed that knife. I shook my head, forcing his hand closed with my own.